Andrew Urquhart with you on the program today, and joining us on the program is the Love Doctor, Vaynard Jacobs from Family Life, and he's on the road by the sounds of things. Vaynard, kia ora, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Kia ora, good morning, Andrew. Good to have a chat again this morning.
And commuting in rain, is that what you're up to at the moment?
Oh, that's right. But this is my safe space. I'm usually on the phone in the car, so hope you can hear me okay.
No, we can hear you fine. We just don't want it to be a distraction to you. Make sure you get to your destination safely. But I mean, you'll be a multitasking expert by now, I'm sure.
Well, the driving and talking actually helps me focus, to be honest. But
okay.
Hey, looking forward to taking on our question for today.
Yeah, I mean, questions on love and relationships. And just a reminder to the listeners, if you have a question for the Love Doctor, you can get in contact anytime, 8168 first word Rhema, or email days@rhema.co.nz. You can be anonymous if you like. And look, I heard some statistics today that actually it's a bit tough for people, perhaps been doing it tough during lockdown, perhaps with that sort of shut down together thing, some relationships coming to an end, and apparently there's a shortage of divorce lawyers in New Zealand, which is a terrible statistic to admit to, but some tough times for the person that wrote this question as well. They said, I was married for 25 years when my ex-husband decided to walk away from our marriage. I've been single for 4 years, and finding another partner hasn't been a focus for me. I'm now at the point where I think I would quite like to meet someone as long as they're God's choice for me. How do you know if God wants you to stay single or has another partner for you? What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so, I mean, listening to the listener's question, it almost sounds like a bit more of a God's plan, purpose for my life question than it does a relationship question.
Yep.
And I want to speak into that, but before we go there, Andrew, I just want to pick up on something you mentioned before.
Yep.
On the statistics, and I guess that goes two ways in terms of there not being enough divorce lawyers available. I know there was a spike in cases in China just post-lockdown, and that was predominantly not necessarily due to more people wanting a divorce, but the reality there on the stats was actually around people not being able to go for a divorce during that time.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden everyone went at once. So again, people love talking about the bleak statistics when it comes to marriage.
Yeah.
But taking things in context is always important. But it just goes to show the thing that we've always been saying is that if people fail to develop effective relationship skills, their relationships won't flourish. Or, we talk about it in the positive. If you develop effective relationship skills, your relationship will flourish. Now, I take it that it's been difficult for many people in the season, being locked down, and I guess being in a space where you're forced to deal with things that otherwise could have been avoided.
Uh-huh.
And I think for many listeners, we often avoid the difficult areas in our relationship.
Yeah.
And facing something like lockdown just means that you're in the same space. Hey, now I've got to deal with these things.
If things get tense, you can't just pop out and visit someone, right? Exactly.
That's the challenge. But that actually leads into today's question brilliantly, because if I think about God's plan, and if I think about God's plan for marriage, we actually talked about this in our most recent podcast release called The Master Plan, just around this thing of God's plan for marriage. And, God, I never created robots. So a lot of people mistakenly think that God has my life all chiseled out, and I really don't have much say as to where I go. Whereas, God has a wonderful plan and a purpose for our lives, but quite often He wants us to just seek Him in our decisions and walk with Him in relationship, much like you would walk with someone you're married to in relationship. And so if I have to look at the overarching question, what is God's plan for my life, then most certainly God never planned for us to be alone. So I guess the listener's question, does God want me to stay single? I would say probably not. However, unless your relationship with God and in your prayer time with God, you feel that that's specifically something God impressed on your heart, then I'd say, hey, be open. But at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, if you think about marriage, all right, marriage actually has a specific function in our lives. One of the functions would be for us to grow. And, God has a funny way of putting people in our lives that are different to us, and people that often bring about frustration. And that is just because we're different. And in a marriage, in a relationship, there's that commitment aspect, meaning we're sticking together. We've made that commitment to stick together so that when our differences come up, instead of walking away from the relationship, we actually choose to honor the commitment and find a way to grow and mature and work through these differences.
Now, it also, talking about lockdown beforehand, it also struck me that it's possible that actually during lockdown, if this is somebody that lives by themselves, that separation from society may have triggered something of saying, hey, you know what? It would be so much better if I had somebody to share my life with, perhaps 4 years on from the pain of divorce and separation. There's some healing that's begun and ready to start something new, ready to take some risks again, perhaps.
Yes, definitely, Andrew. And you've said it so well, because I believe God is in the healing business, right? He's all about us coming into our fullness, whether that be healed from past relationships, healed from wounds from our upbringing. But all in all, I really think, God's plan and purpose for us is to have life and life more abundantly. And life abundantly often coincides with having a flourishing relationship. So, yes, to our listeners sending in that question, it's been 4 years, and obviously you've worked through a lot of hurt in that time. And if you are ready, if you feel ready to explore what stepping into a relationship would look like, then I want to encourage our listener to leave the past behind and allow God to actually rewrite their story. And, God's plan A is never for us to separate, but if we did and, we find ourselves picking up the pieces from our lives, He's always into giving us grace for restoration and for second chances. If your ex is not open to a second chance and that's not something you're exploring, then obviously that door is closed. But I want to just maybe release some grace to our listeners today in that sense, to say that, hey, even though the first marriage didn't turn out quite the way you had hoped for, God has a wonderful plan for restoration in the next marriage.
And perhaps even that they're asking the question says something about perhaps they're ready to take that step now.
Sounds to me like it.
No, very good wisdom and advice indeed. Vaynard, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us again.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Andrew.